What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today I got a reaction to the Grey Havens Top 10 Songs, brought to us by a friend, longtime supporter, patron of the channel, great guy, Scott. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons who make this thing go. If you'd like to support us in any way, check out the Patreon link below or the patron link on the end screen. Now, I never heard of the Grey Havens, but I did a little research on my own, and Scott always brings great stuff. So here's what Scott had to say. Anyone who's listened to reactions to my list knows by now that Christ-centered music is important to me. It's also pretty obvious that my musical tastes run in decidedly vintage directions. That is to say, my favorite bands and artists are either around my age or even older. There are a couple of reasons for this. As I have sought out and embraced a variety of genres of Christian music, what appeals most to me is a combination of Christ-centered and biblical ideas within the lyricism and musical quality that is, if not innovative, at least interesting in its choices. That combination of below-the-surface lyricism and musical excellence automatically narrows considerably my field of choices. But another factor that keeps me going back to the old guys and the condition of Christian music today. Thought-provoking, God-focused lyrics wrapped into the same song with interesting music just doesn't exist in today's popular Christian musical context. It seems that the church's musical direction has gone the way of our culture, increasingly dumbed down and mindless. I'll leave it to another debate to decide if the musical choices are following the culture or if the culture is led by the ubiquitous online influencers, including popular musicians. This is why my past lists have seen repeated performances from the likes of Terry Scott Taylor, Phil Keaggy, Pierce Pettis, Kerry Livgren, John Michael Talbot, and Michael Card, among a few others. I have a Christian playlist on the channel. All those things are contained in there. Fantastic stuff. Go back and watch it, of course, after this. But now, every now and then, I conduct an online search for new music. New to me, anyway. Using searches like good Christian music, good adult Christian music, non-mainstream Christian artists, or even Christian music I might actually like. In doing these searches, I don't hope to find anything that grabs me, music that meets my impossibly narrow standards. But I look anyway, and I commend you for that, Scott, because I don't know the last time I've looked for new Christian music. I kicked it in a long time ago. Scott says, but recently a miracle happened. About 2 months ago, as I write this, it's May 19, 2023, I set out once again to search for music worth listening to. I remember thinking this must be what it's like to search for buried treasure at the city dump, but I sent out my search anyway. This time my search language switched to something more specific. I decided to look for, quote, quality Christian singer-songwriter music. As always, I landed on a number of websites whose authors claim to have found artists that shouldn't be missed. I listened to a few tracks, and admittedly some of the artists were pretty good, but they just didn't grab me. But on a few of these lists, I saw this band, the Grey Havens. So I listened to one track and was immediately stopped in my proverbial tracks. He quotes, now what do we have here? I might have asked out loud to no one in particular. I listened to another song, then another, then another. I had to explore further the Grey Havens. Sounds like a band name, but it turns out to be a guy and his wife. And even then, his wife sings with him on only a handful of songs, at least as far as I can tell. The Grey Havens is primarily a guy named David Radford, a former top 20 American Idol contestant who writes the songs, sings lead, and plays guitar and piano. His wife Alicia sings along at times and provides really nice harmonies, but David is pretty much the whole show. His lyrics are what he calls narrative pop folk and are influenced by the writings of J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, and other authors. For the past 2 months since I discovered the Grey Havens, I've listened to little else. My wife and I traveled 3 hours recently to see them in concert at a church in Raleigh, North Carolina. The place was packed with mostly 20-somethings who seemed to know and sing along with every song. I'm anxious for your reaction to an artist, or is it a band, who for once on my list isn't 70 years old. Say it's a very popular thing nowadays for artists who are singular, in this case a duo, to have a different name, right? It kind of lets you remain incognito a little bit. So I do like it, but it does get confusing. And on this too, I will add that Alicia plays the ukulele and the mandolin on this. So they have 4 albums. They have 2 EPs. So we're going to jump into this list. If you've never watched one of our videos before, or if you forgot, if it's been a while, the music will not be in this video, but it'll be a Vimeo link below. I always encourage you to follow along. Stuff like this where the lyricism is incredibly important. I invite you to go follow along. All right, let's kick this thing off. We start out with She Waits, the title track from the She Waits album in 2018, their 3rd album. Scott says much of the subject matter for this album, and this track especially, centers around the return of Jesus in eternity, but from our perspective as a waiting bride of Christ. That's who the she references in this title track, the Church of Jesus Christ, as we learn and grow and invite others to come along with us as we wait patiently. And I should have talked about at the start. I'm in the same boat with Scott. I mean, I did mention that I've stopped looking for good Christian music. I mean, I'm a Christian as well, like Scott, and I have the same opinion of the commercialism of not only Christian music, but just Christianity in its essence is just not what the God of the Bible calls for. So I'm very much looking forward to this one. Thanks again, Scott. All right, She Waits. Really good songwriter. I don't think I need to go into that too much because Scott kind of covered what it was about. And if you're listening to the song, you've got it. You know, like I think verse 3 is, I mean, that's all good. But she's seen empires come and go. Watch the kingdom's children go, sparks and embers far from home, born to shine and to behold. Because on her chain is a lock and the key is a radiance she will see from the lights that's going to be cast from sons and the daughters free. She waits, where he hits that high note, gets that upper register of his voice. Just really, really well done. I like his voice, like all of it, just nicely done. So that's a really good opening song for us. Next up, we head to The Stone from their first album, Fire and Stone, in 2015, which I read was actually funded by a Kickstarter, right? So that's pretty awesome. Scott says, here Radford tackles the resurrection of Jesus. I'll let the lyrics speak for themselves, except to say that Radford songwriting nicely depicts the bigger picture of how Jesus' death and resurrection accomplishes for us the turning of our hearts of stone into hearts of flesh, a theme he revisits often in his songwriting. The stone, of course, talking about Jesus, who's referred to as the cornerstone in the Bible, and the lyrics are fantastic. The stone heard inside the first breath of life. It rolled as it shook by the grounds where they stood, where the angel stood by, the side. So the stone's being rolled back, and actually is rolled back and actually up this huge hill, is if you ever really dive into it, but that's neither here nor there. But it couldn't have just fallen off, is what I'm saying. And Jesus is coming out. When the men, for fear and dread, were hiding away, the door bust wide, and a woman's voice inside cried, "There's none inside the grave." And the instrumentation on here is fantastic. It's rich. You almost get a little Irish pump right there in that little interlude. There was a way, even death he would break, for the fires that preyed on the innocent burned to the ground, torn by the sound of his voice. To the ground came the oh. The curtain finally came down. The curse is broken now. So just well written and really well done musically and arrangement wise. Next up, we have Shadows of the Dawn. It's going to be the first of several songs from Ghost of a King in 2016, the follow-up to Fire and Stone, so their second album. Scott says, what immediately grabbed me with Radford's songwriting is his grasp of the deeper implications of the Christian story. With this track, he delves into his own transformation from darkness to light and the ensuing hunger to pursue the light or the truth that is Jesus. Shadows of the Dawn. What strikes me through the first three songs, the instrumentation is just spot on. David sounds so crystal clear. The production is great. And the writing on this song, like the first two, is fantastic. I'll just give you a little glimpse into it. Verse 2, the kingdom of the morning star can pierce a cold and stony heart. Its grace went through me like a sword and came out like a song. And I'm just waiting for the day in the shadows of the dawn. And of course, but I won't wait resting my bones. I'll take these foolishness roads of grace and run towards the dawn. And when I rise and dawn turns to day, I'll shine as bright as the sun. And these roads that I've run will be wise. So the transformation and the guiding of your faith. So yeah, really well done. The acoustic on here in particular, I mean, all the instrumentation spot on, was fantastic. And we stay on this album, Ghost of a King. This time we got the title track. Scott says, I can't remember the last song I heard that so beautifully represents the work of God, the Holy Spirit, in a life. The lyrics of this track take me immediately to the story of the conversion of the Apostle Paul on the road to Damascus, which boys and girls you'll find in Acts 9. But where I think Radford starts with Paul's story, he takes it into each of our lives and the miracle of our own conversion from, once again, hearts of stone into hearts of flesh, which is a reference to the Old Testament prophet Ezekiel speaking for God, quote, I will give them an undivided heart and put a new spirit in them. I will remove from them their heart of stone and give them a heart of flesh. All right, Ghost of a King, fantastic lyrics on this as well. And once again, I mean, I'm going to be a broken record, no pun intended, of just the instrumentation's fantastic. Another great acoustic work, but keys, everything is spot on this. And I mean, in most of these songs, David goes from, quiet and slower tempo and then builds into louder and a little quicker tempo on the chorus. Not a traditional slow, fast, verse chorus structure, but he builds on it. I think the bridge was great. So I knelt beside the river and I drank until I drank until I drank until I died. But something in the water must have brought me back. It brought me back. It brought me back to life. So in other words, the dying to yourself that Jesus talks about, right? Must die to yourself. And so I thought he covered that quite well there. We're staying right here in Ghost of a King album in 2016. This time we got This Is My Soul. Scott says, maybe my favorite Gray Havens tune thus far. Here Radford poetically condenses the story of creation and the fall of man, then the coming of Jesus and the restoration of our relationship with God. He connects the story beautifully in the chorus of the song by emphasizing how the actions of both men, Adam and Jesus, extend to us. I'm guessing that Radford knows very well his book of Romans. This Is My Soul, just a fantastic song. Sounds fantastic. The drumming on here is great. There's no drum credits. There's no credits for any of the individual musicians, but the drumming really is powerful on this one. But David's performance is great. And I mean, it just tells the story of the Garden of Eden and then the sin. And so it is closed down, but now Jesus comes and now you have, at verse 3, I'll just read you. And then this perfect Son of Man, he took the place the voice had planned since the garden and before. He took the swords and cursed the grave. There's nothing more to separate us from the promise, the words of a living hope. And then that chorus, this is my soul. You were born into what this man has done. It all extends to you. Let the words shake on down along your spine and ring out true that you might find. And ring out true that you might find new life. So this song was a highlight so far for me, but we're only halfway through this list. We got one more song from Ghost of a King, At Last, the King. Scott says, like the previous track, Radford takes us to the fall of man and Adam and Eve, but here he takes on a mythological tone, though this story is no myth, as he gives us a lesson in the history of the plan of God from day one. His love for Tolkien comes through here as he tells this story. The song could make a strong choice for Christmas. At Last, the King, nice little acoustic finish there. I mean, all these songs really do have that little bit slower verse build and then, louder and a little quicker in the chorus. And so it just starts out God telling, Satan that he's going to send his son, basically. And then the chorus, in the dark and the shadows, light has come, in the quiet and the dead of night, glory, glory, sang the angels in the highest. At last, the King has arrived. And then verse 2, he's taken out to the desert, right out upon the sand, said the devil, take my hand at your bended knee. You will hold everything you see. But the King said, no, I have come to be the spotless lamb undone, and I will fall, but not to you. So the 3 desert temptations, he covers one of them here. It's in Luke 4. But once again, very good. So all 4 of those songs are strong from Ghost of a King. So I'm going to have to check that album out. Now we go back to the album that we started with, She Waits from 2018. Once again, their 3rd album. We're going with the song See You Again. Scott says, a strangely chipper song when we realize the point of view of the track. Here the narrator is singing from his grave to the love he left behind. But of course, for the believer, our passing is not a sad occasion, as we only have an eternity spent with our Lord and all those we will see again, as Radford sings, with forever, there's another day. See You Again. A little different mix on this one, I don't want to say contemporary, just a little different. Almost sounded like a drum machine on there. I could never figure out whether it was or not. It's not a drum machine, it's a muted drum, but either way, a little bit of mixing on David's voice as well, which made it different, which I liked. And See You Again is, he's telling the loved one, and it starts out, he's telling, my face, what's he saying? My name is on the gravestone. My name on a stone written down. Darwin is the same. It's where I'm living now. Yeah, we always knew that today would come because all we had was a spark. But one day soon when the sparks all bloom and they're chasing back the dark, gonna see you again on the gold streets standing next to me. I know I'm gonna see you again. Darwin won't be long until every trace of trouble is gone. We'll be together. So, when you lose the loved one and it's so painful, but you're going to see each other again in heaven. Now, what that looks like, we don't know because, we're told we're not going to have any need to be married, but I still hope I get to spend eternity with my wife. So, yeah. So that's kind of what I take this as. It's a viewpoint I took it from. I thought of my wife, Gina, as I was listening to this. Next up, same album, She Waits, we have Forever. Scott says David Radford is, and I'm guessing here, somewhere in his early to mid-30s. He would be correct. He's 33 years old. Yet he possesses a rare view of eternity, especially as he looks at his own life and how brief our stay is here. He expresses this view with this track, beautifully communicating how, even in this life, eternity is in our veins and our bones. All right, Forever, nice piano work there by David. More piano-driven than really any other song on here. so far. But yeah, it's just talking about forever's in his bones, right? He knows that he is destined for a different place. He says, "Look, all I know is I believe it's going to change at the moment when the trumpets blow, and all I see, I believe is going to change inside the walls of eternity." So here we go, because forever's in my soul, it's in my veins. I think we know that the future is going to be so bright, and when you turn my way, it's going to fill my eyes forever. Turn my way, forever is in my soul, it's in my veins, and it won't let go. I know I read you a lot of lyrics of these, but Christian songs are very important to make sure that we're not the object of the song and of our faith, that Jesus is. And David does a really good job with that. All right, we still got 2 songs left. We're going to go back to that debut, Fire and Stone, from 2015. We got Far Kingdom. Scott says, with this track, Radford draws a bit on his love for the Chronicles of Narnia. His description of the Far Kingdom rings familiar to those who know that great children's series written by C.S. Lewis. In the books, Lewis refers to Aslan's home as Aslan's country and his father as the emperor beyond the sea. All right, Far Kingdom, just talking about heaven, right? There's a far kingdom on the other side of the glass, and by faint light we see still there's more gladness, longing for the sight than to behold or to be filled by anything. And the chorus is a river we will know, ever clear and ever full, for the fount that overflows in the light of the King. And when we drink it, we will find that this joy ever full will ever rise, and it'll rise on in the kingdom, So good song there. Not a standout for him, but I mean, still a good song. All right, we're to our final track. Go back to the She Waits album from 2018. We got Storehouse. Scott says, the Grey Havens concert my wife and I attended a month ago closed with this track. As I mentioned earlier, the audience is filled with young adults who seem to know every song. So when Radford launched into this a cappella chorus, the crowd joined in to make this a rousing close to an excellent evening. The song itself is a repentant yet hopeful confession of sin. This could easily be the confession of the prodigal son of Jesus' famous story, but it is easily my story, as well as every other person who has realized our imprisonment within our own sin, only to find our Father there, waiting with open arms. Musician and theologian Michael Card wrote one of the great lines in one of his songs, quote, "To be so completely guilty and given over to despair, to look into your judge's face and see a Savior there." All right, Storehouse. Really good song here. And he's basically just talking about how he keeps sinning, but then he remembers he can go back to God, like he can go back to Jesus, like he's going to be forgiven. That Storehouse, right? And more soulful song. So a different kind of sound for him. I know we get the a cappella at the end and all that good stuff, but there's definitely more soul to this song than any other. And with that, it's going to bring me to my favorite tracks. Honorable mention, At Last, The King, and See You Again. Faves are going to be She Waits, the first song that we heard. This, My Soul, probably my favorite song. And then this last one, Storehouse. So a fantastic list brought to us by Scott. Scott, I'm going to listen to their albums, right? Especially these first 2 albums. First 3. So yeah, I'm going to check that out. So let us know what you think of this below. What other songs should I check out? And who else meets this very narrowed criteria that Scott has, and in turn that I have? I have the same criteria he has. I didn't mention that, but that's a perfect criteria. And the criteria really should have for, quote, Christian music. So thanks again to Scott. Thanks everybody for joining me. Until next time, I will see you.